Hi, Internet.
We found ourselves teaching this game quite regularly at our local gaming store, and it seemed like a thorough tutorial series was in order.
Heck, we don't even have to be in the same room in order to do this. Learning this game can sometimes feel like drinking from a fire hose. It has rules upon rules, and it has rules for its rules. It's rules all the way down.
Our goal is that for new players to be able to watch this series and be able to take their models to their favorite local gaming store and be ready to roll dice.
Once you have the basics down, the meaty stuff can come later. We will cover the fundamentals in this Kill Team 101 series, and you will walk away from this with a solid foundation of knowledge about the game. Once you have some experience under your belt, you will be in great shape to come back and watch our more advanced Tactica videos to explore the nuances of the game.
And even though we say basics, just be prepared, because even when distilled down to the essentials, this game is still quite complex.
To play Warhammer 40k Kill Team, you'll need a few things. If this is your first step into miniature wargaming, the important thing to note is that these types of games are not all-in-one board games where you buy a box and you're ready to go. Sure, there are some starter sets for Kill Team out there, but many people don't get into it that way. You will need,
First and foremost, dice. This game is played with six-sided dice, or D6s, as we'll refer to them here and in later videos. Note that if there is ever a reference to a D3 or a quote-unquote three-sided dice, you simulate this by rolling a six-sided dice and divide by 2, rounding up. So a 1 or a 2 on a D6 would be counted as a 1. A 3 or a 4 is counted as a 2, and a 5 or a 6 are counted as a 3.
the next thing you will need is a ruler or measuring tape. The game uses inches for measuring. If you go the route of a measuring tape, anything more than 3 feet is just overkill. You use your measuring device in order to measure the movement of your models and distance between models.
You'll also need a game board. This game is played on a 22-inch by 30-inch board. If you don't have a board, you can use some masking tape or set up some boxes or dice around just to mark out the gameplay area.
And to go on your board, you'll need some terrain. You can literally use anything for this. If you don't have fancy terrain built or painted, it's not a big deal. You can use empty soda cans, tissue boxes, crumpled up paper, honestly everything. Get creative. We do have to admit though, if you can get and paint up beautiful terrain, it's an absolutely fulfilling thing to look at a board filled with your painted models and terrain, and gives such a great level of immersion.
And speaking of models, you'll need those too. It's our favorite part of the game, honestly, the models. You'll need these models to represent the combatants from your faction, and we'll discuss in a later video how you build up that roster.
Pages 18 and 19 of the core rulebook cover how to read a datasheet for a model. If you have experience playing Warhammer, this should all be very familiar to you, but be careful. The same model in Kill Team may have slightly different rules and costs than what you are used to in Big Hammer, so it is still worth double-checking your model's stats and abilities.
So here we have a sample data card that we're going to walk through as a way to illustrate all the different statistics. On the top of the data card, you'll see the core statistics of the model. The first column has the model's name, pretty self-explanatory. After that, you'll see M, which stands for movement speed of this model in inches. This indicates the maximum distance the model can go with a normal move. WS stands for weapon skill, describing your model's success to hit with a melee weapon. The 3+, or a 3 up, as you'll commonly hear people say, indicates that the melee weapon will successfully hit its target on a d6 roll of a 3 or higher. A 4+ means you need to roll a 4 or higher, 5+ needs a 5 or higher, and so on.
Next is BS. Not that, ballistic skill. This is your model's chance for hitting with a shooting weapon or grenade. Again, here we see a 3+, indicating that a shot successfully hits its target on a d6 roll of 3 or higher. It's important to note that while WS and BS values on this datasheet are the same, that's not the case for some models, so make sure you take note of these stats individually.
Next we see S, or strength, indicating the force at which your model can attack in melee combat. Following that is T, or toughness, which is your model's natural fortitude to resist being wounded when attacked. The strength and toughness values come into play when resolving attacks on a model, which we will cover in depth in a later video.
W stands for wounds, or in essence, the health points a model has. A stands for attacks, and this is the base or default number of melee attacks a model can make. LD stands for leadership, representing that model's overall will and mental fortitude, which is relevant when making tests to see if that model will push on fighting in certain conditions.
SV, or save, is the effectiveness of the model's armor at ignoring incoming damage. Like WS and BS, this is signified by a 3+ here, meaning that a 3 or higher on a single D6 roll is necessary to shrug off an attack. And finally, the last statistic is only relevant in list building, but max relates to the maximum number of that model that can be taken for that kill team.
Below the statistics, we have the war gear options. This describes which weapons are legal to be equipped on each model. The statistics for all of these weapons are typically listed 1 or 2 pages later in the book following the relevant data sheets.
It's important to note now, each model and their equipped war gear have a certain amount of points attributed to them. This is a measure of their relative power compared to other models or other weapons. Meaning, a stronger model or powerful weapon will be worth more points than a weaker equivalent. In the same section where you find the war gear statistics, you will also note the model and war gear points costs. For example, one tactical marine gunner can choose to replace their bolt gun with a melta-gun. A tactical marine gunner costs 13 points for the body alone, 3 points for a melta-gun, and 0 points for the bolt pistol, frag grenades, and crack grenades, adding up to 16 points total for this equipped model.
The abilities section shows special rules or powers that models have. Some are faction specific, while others are unique to specific models on the data card. The specialist section lists all the possible specialisms that can be assigned to these models, which brings us to our next topic, how to actually form a kill team.
Your kill team is drawn from a faction, such as Space Marines, Adeptus Mechanicus, and Orcs. At the time of this recording, there are 24 different factions to choose from. Some are more shooting oriented, others do best in melee, and some can manifest tremendous psychic powers with energy from the warp. And others are just a jack of all trades. If you don't have a loner team from a friend or a demo army at your local gaming shop to start with, take some time to look through the plethora of options out there and find a team that suits your playstyle, or pick a team that has the fluff or aesthetics that you find most interesting.
The minimum requirements for a kill team, found on page 62 of the core manual, are 3 models, with one of them being your leader. Now, that's pretty bare bones, as that will rarely be a full force. Most teams have 1 leader, up to 3 specialists of different types, and then a number of normal units, so long as you do not exceed the points limit of the mission you are going to play. The total points of your team, or force, is calculated by adding all the points values of the models and their equipped war gear, as we alluded to in the previous section.
So what's so important about specialists? Well, your leader and other specialist units have unique abilities added to them without costing additional points. You can see all of these options on pages 66 through 77 of the core manual. Remember that you have to check your model's datasheet to know what specialisms they're allowed to have, and also note you cannot have more than one of a particular specialist on your team. Certain factions can break the 3 specialist limit by including special hero models that are called specialist retainers. These models, when in your kill team, are always that particular specialist, but do not take up one of your aforementioned 3 specialist slots. Think of them as a bonus or additional specialist. Although, as stated before, even with a specialist retainer, you're still not allowed to have duplicate specialisms on your team.
As a quick aside, there has been a lot of debate in our community regarding what point level a standard kill team game should be played at. A few surveys were put out at the end of last year showing via an overwhelming response that most people prefer to play at 125 points, largely influenced by the expensive models added to the game in the Elites expansion. We agree with this and play all of our games locally at 125 points, irrespective of what the mission states in a book, whether it's tournament prep or casual fun, and we encourage you all to do the same.
Command points are a resource that you can spend to use a tactic that is either universal, meaning available to all factions, or faction specific, just available to your particular team. Tactics allow access to special abilities or modifiers that can skew the game in your favor. Generally speaking, you start each game of Kill Team with 2 command points, and in most cases will earn 2 additional command points at the top of each round. This isn't always the case, however.
To get into the specifics, at the beginning of each battle round you gain 1 command point automatically, as well as 1 additional command point if your leader is on the battlefield and is not shaken. Exactly what this means will be covered in a later video, but it is essentially a stunned condition where he can't do anything. This is where your starting 2 command points come from. However, you can gain a one-time bonus at the start of the game of 1 CP for every 10 fewer points your team has than your opponent.
At the top of each subsequent battle round, you automatically gain 1 command point, plus an additional command point if your leader is on the battlefield and again is not shaken. Thus, your 2 additional command points at the top of each round, as mentioned before.
Command points and tactics are a big part of the game's tactical side, but if you're getting into your first game, it's okay to completely ignore them until you get the base mechanics down.
There are a few golden rules to follow as you play to help streamline things and help resolve disputes. First, you can only ever re-roll a die once, no matter how many rules would allow you to do so. Even if you have 2 or more rules that would interact and allow you to re-roll the die, you can only ever re-roll it once.
Second, whoever has initiative, which will be explained in the next video, decides the order of things that happen simultaneously if it is unclear what the order should be. For example, if both players use a tactic which happens at the beginning of the shooting phase, then the player with initiative decides which tactic happens first.
Third, if 2 rules conflict and you and your opponent can figure out how to resolve them, have a roll-off and move on. This means each of you roll a die and the high roller gets to decide how the interaction is resolved. Sometimes rules have bizarre interactions and there's no immediate clear answer. In those moments, let the dice gods decide.
Fourth, and most importantly, have fun. This is a fantastic game and one we spend a ton of time playing. Try new tactics, learn from your mistakes, laugh and cry with your opponent when the dice do seemingly impossible things.
If you have any questions at all about the rules covered here, do not hesitate to ask in the comments section. We'll answer you and help you figure out what's going on.
The rest of this Kill Team 101 series will cover the remainder of the core rules. The next video will cover decisions you make before the game and how you handle initiative once the game starts.
So make sure to subscribe and click the notification button. That way you'll be the first to know when we have more content for you.
See you guys in the next video.
Bye!